I'm continuing my adventure to play all of the mainline Resident Evil games in order, many of which for the first time, and one thing that I have been told from the very beginning of starting this review series is, oh no, just wait for Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 is terrible. Resident Evil 6 is the worst in the franchise. Many of the people that have been watching these reviews have warned me for months about getting to RE6, and looking up the average length of the game, seeing that it was going to be 20 hours long, the longest Resident Evil game in the entire franchise, I began to get very worried about what I was getting myself into. Beginning with Leon's campaign, we start mid-story as he's smack dab in the middle of another zombie outbreak. The president is now dead. Sorry, Ashley. And I'm fighting my way through zombie-infested city streets while cars are crashing and exploding all around me. People are being eaten in the streets. I'm running around through cemeteries and dark sewers and train stations, fighting more zombies, getting onto a plane that's filled with more zombies, dual-wielding, spin-kicking, and suplexing their asses. After surviving a plane crash, and then I face off with this huge beast of a creature named Ustanak or whatever.
Welcome to the club. You get used to it.
And eventually, finally getting to see Leon and Chris Redfield face-to-face in the same game. And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking to myself,
Yes! That's awesome!
Okay, but let me back up. Originally, RE6 came out in 2012 and continued from the successful elements of both RE4 and 5. It decided to take everything that those games did and turn it up to 11 when it came to the action and intensity, as well as delivering its story through the course of 4 different overlapping campaigns that you have to play through, each of which taking about 5 to 6 hours to complete, which is kind of funny when you think about each of those campaigns are pretty much the same length as the entirety of the Resident Evil 3 remake. So basically, you can look at it as getting 4 games for the price of 1. When I reviewed Resident Evil 5, I really talked up about how much I loved the storyline, but a lot of the gameplay with the AI partner playing it single player and certain things not registering correctly while trying to play it on PC gave me kind of a headache, and it was a situation where I was very mixed by the experience, where I loved the story and what was happening with the characters. I just wasn't overly thrilled about the gameplay. With Resident Evil 6, this situation has been completely reversed for me. I actually loved the gameplay of this game, for the most part anyway, and playing it solo was not an issue at all because the AI partner that it gives you was a complete 180 experience than Sheva from Part 5. The AI partner does exactly what they're supposed to at all times. They never get in the way. I never had to worry about managing their ammo or their inventory, and they are actually able to fight and shoot the enemies without any kind of issue. So being somebody that prefers to play solo and doesn't vibe with the co-op stuff, Resident Evil 6 handled this perfectly for a single player experience, and it was a night and day difference from playing 5, so for me, this was fantastic. I also did like the controls of this game for the most part. Yeah, not having this standard inventory and item boxes does feel like something is missing from Resident Evil, but 4 did the briefcase thing, so it's not like it's the first time they've tried to switch it up. It actually allows you to switch weapons incredibly easily using the D-pad, which is something the remakes would eventually continue and improve upon, and it took a cue from the Revelations games and allows you to heal yourself with just the click of a button, which honestly was my favorite feature from the Revelations games. You get to perform a variety of counterattacks like Leon's classic roundhouse kicks and suplexes, and the wildest thing is even without a weapon, you can just run up and attack freehand if you just want to get up close and personal with the enemies. When you fall on the ground, it lets you continue attacking and rolling from side to side, still staying within the battle before you even get up. And I really like the variety of weapons that you have here too. Between dual-wielding Leon or Ada's crossbow bolts that explode on impact. The The downside is the upgrading system of the weapons, which is kind of a joke because they do away with that and instead just give you points to acquire skills, which is kind of lame, and I never really thought many of them were that useful to begin with. And it also doesn't have a cool merchant character like Resident Evil 4 did, and I can't believe they wouldn't bring back or mimic that type of character for Resident Evil 5 or 6. You also don't really have a map, which is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's just a device that tells you which direction to go and a meter showing you the distance about how far it is to get to where you need to go. In a way, its structure felt very different than any of the other games because there's not really any looping or backtracking within the same areas. It's pretty straightforward. You run from location A to location B. I did like knowing where I had to go and not getting lost, but it also did lose something not being able to view an entire map of the area and seeing how it all connects. And I also hated the areas where you need to look for 3 keys while avoiding these monsters that regenerate and never die. There's a segment like this in all 4 campaigns, and even though I guess this is more of the classic RE vibe, it turned out to be the most frustrating parts of all 4 segments for me. Like, how was I supposed to know there was a goddamn ladder there? But the real downside for this game, for me personally, flip-flopped from my experience of RE5, because it's the storyline. It's not necessarily a bad storyline, but it's pretty convoluted and not really all that interesting when you put the pieces together. Probably the best way to talk about it is just to go in order of the campaigns, because each does their own thing while also having an overarching story that goes through all 4 of them. And this is a really ambitious idea, and I do respect the effort of it. Every game so far, for the most part, has changed up the style of playing as multiple characters. Either you choose who you want to be, or there's 2 things going on at the same time, or you play as one character for a while, then switch to the other, whatever the case may be. But this one decides to have 4 different overlapping stories that are happening in and around the same time. And periodically, they overlap. But also, because of this, the individual campaigns can feel a little confusing because you need to play all 4 of them to get the full context of everything that's going on. The first campaign stars our good old boy Leon Kennedy and his partner being a new character named Helena. In this story, it's revealed that the president was going to finally reveal the truth of the Raccoon City incident, but before he was able to do so, somebody infected him, turning him into a zombie. But not just him. This new virus strain spreads through gas, infecting an entire town, so Leon is once again forced to navigate through a zombie-ridden area to try to get to safety and uncover the mystery of who did this. It's pretty basic stuff, but this segment was the most fun for me. This is actually what I wanted a little bit more of in Resident Evil 2, in the sense of being able to traverse a zombie-infested city. I'm a horror guy through and through, and I love zombie media, and it's one of the things that drew me to Resident Evil in the first place. Zombies are my preferred enemy of the franchise, and though I still like the Plagas stuff from 4 and 5, these are my favorite kinds of enemies to fight, just traditional horror movie zombies. It's a different type of zombie than the original T-Virus in the first few games, but they essentially act the same. And there's variety to them. Some look like they just turned, and others just look like rotting corpses. I loved it. I loved being trapped in the gun shop, fighting off against a horde of zombies, and afterwards going through a cemetery at night, or the subway segments. I don't know, maybe I'm just easy to please, but this kind of zombie fighting stuff is my jam. And I felt like the Leon segment was the most traditionally Resident Evil. The others that I'll get into here in a moment all have different vibes to them, for better or for worse. And in the Leon campaign, there are some decent puzzles, like in the cathedral. You have a fun boss fight against Helena's sister that's been mutated into a giant creature. And of course, Ada Wong will show up in the shadows to help out on occasion, but she's up to her own agenda as well. I really like the segment on the plane. That was a unique environment, and it gets overrun with zombies, and Leon has to try to land the damn plane. And it was definitely at this point that I kind of understood why people don't like this game, even though I personally was having a blast with it. It's that it's just relentless. That's the only word I can think to really describe it. It's extremely over the top, and it does not stop. The plane crashes in China, where the other characters of the game eventually show up as well, and we cross over with them periodically while working around this plotline of a terrorist group called Neo Umbrella, which I think is kind of a lame name because it's too much on the nose, but it's led by a national security advisor, Simmons, a corrupt government official, of course, who is the main antagonist of this game and let loose the virus, killing the president. And this guy is just an extremely generic bad guy. He doesn't really have any connection to our characters, and in the Leon campaign, you meet him for about 2 seconds before he's infected and mutates into a giant creature that you have to fight a lot, with moments that are so absurdly stupid that I couldn't help but love them. Like when you battle Simmons on a moving train, really cool aesthetic going on here, and then Simmons transforms into a fucking dinosaur. No, I'm not kidding. Like, he's just a dinosaur. And you'd think that would be enough, but then he transforms into a giant bug, and then you have to fight him with lightning rods. Oh, and right before that, you're traversing a skyscraper, and this game also gives Leon and Ada shippers probably the best scene of them together in the entire franchise.
I was just resting my eyes.
Shouldn't sleep on the job.
Okay, so I get why people don't like it. This game went to the extreme when it comes to everything. Giant set pieces, non-stop battles, over-the-top enemies that never die, and tons of conspiracies and twists and turns in its confusing narrative. It went balls to the wall, and sometimes when you do that, it becomes too much. It's also a far cry from just a character trapped in a creepy mansion where we started. The horror is all but gone, even if you are still fighting monsters. But I do have to say this about that. Since now, in hindsight, we know that Resident Evil goes back to the pure horror vibes with Part 7, and we also got the remakes of 2, 3, and 4, it kind of makes me appreciate that there is a game like RE6 in the series. Look, if every Resident Evil game that came out after this was just more of the same, I think that would be overkill. But having one game in the series that just decides to go as hard as it possibly can in the action, scale, spectacle, and story, I kind of respect that. They could have actually made this an endgame game for the OG characters, especially since 7 and 8 would introduce a new main character. Like, imagine if they would have included Jill and Claire. Jill for the Chris campaign and Claire for the Leon campaign. If they did that, it could have very well felt like a massive send-off game with a huge apocalyptic vibe to it. Anyways, in the Chris Redfield campaign, this one is, well, like I said before, relentless. And that word mostly applies to his segment. Chris's story is literally just non-stop gun battles over and over and over again. And though there is still some horror stuff happening here, like a giant monster every once in a while or some spider people, these segments really do feel the most distant from Resident Evil, and I may as well just be playing a Call of Duty game. I'm not really big on infected enemies using complex weapons to fight you in Resident Evil, and I know that some of the Plagas enemies in 4 and 5 use guns, but during Chris's campaign in 6, it's easy for me to forget that I'm fighting monsters at all, and they may as well just be soldier characters. Yeah, some of them transform mid-battle, but ultimately these segments just feel like an action military-based game, which is fine if that's what I wanted to play, but I am here playing Resident Evil, so I'd rather be fighting monsters. I guess it's just an attempt to get more variety and to make each campaign feel individualized and unique. As in Leon's campaign, we're fighting traditional zombies. In Chris's, we're mostly in big gun battles. In Jake's campaign, you continuously fight this undying creature similar to like a Nemesis or a Dr. Birkin. And in Ada's campaign, you get a lot more puzzle solving and espionage sneaking around. So you do get a lot of bang for your buck, essentially having 4 different games with 4 different styles. That being said, though, I do think Chris as a character has the best individual story. He's dealing with the PTSD of losing his entire team at the hands of supposedly Ada Wong, so he recluses himself and starts getting drunk to suppress the pain. It's kind of like he can save the world, he took out Wesker, but still couldn't save his own team. There's still things that he can't do. Then his partner for his campaign, named Pierce, who is just kind of a generic soldier guy, convinces him to join him once more on a mission, leading them all to China, where he discovers Ada Wong is there, and he is unyielding in his pursuit to take her down, even at the expense of his own crew. It sucks to see him go through this, following him since the first game, and how he's finally reached this breaking point after all this time. During his pursuit of Ada Wong, he crosses paths with Leon, and as a fanboy of the series, getting to see them together was some great fan service. They have a little scuffle, with both of them getting in some good hits, but obviously Capcom would never want to have a true winner here. But it shows us that both characters are complete badasses. Leon protecting Ada as Chris wants her dead. It's great stuff. Eventually, they go their separate ways, and that's not the only unique interaction that Chris gets to have in this game, because the third campaign features a brand new character named Jake Mueller, who is apparently the son of Albert Wesker. Not sure who Wesker got freaky with. Maybe it was that Tricell chick, I don't know. She wanted his D pretty bad. But now Jake exists, and thanks to his father's blood, he is immune to the current C virus, which makes him a target. And he's teamed up with Sherry Birkin. Holy crap. The little girl that you rescue in Resident Evil 2 is now an adult and is working to bring Jake in to help create a vaccine from his blood that will help fight against the C virus. And honestly, I think Jake's campaign might have actually been the best in the game. Like, sure, Leon's segment was my favorite because of what you got to do in the game and the locations, but story-wise and the chemistry and interaction between the characters, I think the Jake and Sherry section was the best. This is the only duo that really works for me in the game. Like I said, Pierce just kind of feels like a generic soldier guy, and besides her sister's death, I couldn't tell you anything about Helena. But Jake and Sherry are both so interesting together when they're back and forth and their teamwork. It was so much fun to watch. They fight a lot of armed enemies too, unfortunately, but their main threat is this giant motherfucker named Ustanak, which is a powerful BOW that you face multiple times during their entire campaign. He's basically the nemesis of this game. There's moments where you have to sneak around him, other moments where you have to face him head on, and he never stops. Oh, I also forgot to mention that this game will give you plenty of moments where it'll shift into high-speed chases where you're driving vehicles or first-person shooting moments. Again, I know it's kind of absurd and over the top, but I loved escaping the avalanche on the snowmobiles or riding the motorcycle at full speed through the city. Ridiculous, sure, but fun, yes.
Hold on as tight as you can, okay?
Anyways, Jake, although very dismissive and snarky, is actually a really good dude at heart, and I really enjoyed watching his progression through the story. And how it relates to Chris is that Chris becomes aware that he's Wesker's son, and basically gives Jake the option to shoot him for revenge if that's what he wants to do. But he also respects and trusts Jake to do the right thing and what's best for Sherry. It's a really great coming to terms with one's choices moment, as well as looking towards a brighter future. I really love their interactions together, and once they split apart, Chris goes on to fight a giant fucking monster named House with translucent skin and a giant skeleton underneath. I don't know, but it's pretty dope. Jake and Sherry face off against Ustanak, and eventually a really silly moment happens where Jake just decides to square up with him with no weapons. But man, this thing is hard to take down, and you do fight it multiple times, but this one doesn't really feel too exhausting. Every fight feels unique and different enough that it didn't bother me. Also, I don't know if Resident Evil fans do power scaling or anything like that, but I'd be really curious to see where this guy ranks among the big bads, because he's definitely presented as one of the most powerful creatures that you fight in any of these games. And then finally, you have the Ada Wong campaign, which included probably my least favorite moment of the entire game, trying to escape this stupid submarine, having to go underwater and run while it's sinking to the ground, and I kept dying over and over. So save the most frustrating for last, I guess. Simmons, while experimenting with the C virus, was successful in creating an Ada Wong clone using the body of a woman named Carla as a vessel for it. And I wonder, is this one moment what started that weird obsession with cloning in the live-action Resident Evil stuff? It's such a prominent thing that happens in many of the Wes Anderson movies and also in that terrible Netflix TV show. The live action stuff seems to be obsessed with the idea of cloning, but this is the only time I've ever seen it happen in the games, and it doesn't even work right, because Carla takes back control and has her own agenda against Simmons the entire time. She's the one that actually disposed of Chris's original crew and abducted Jake and Sherry. So through the 3 other campaigns, you are encountering both moments with the real and fake Ada Wong at various points in time. And by the end of the game, Chris never learns that there was a fake Ada Wong, so somebody might want to tell him about that. Anyway, the Ada segments are more in tune with her character, so there's a lot of sneaking around, crawling through air ducts, using the rappel gun, and way more puzzle solving than in any of the others. Some of which were extremely annoying, but hey, whatever, gotta get through them. It's also a bit anticlimactic because we already saw Ada fighting Simmons with Leon in the first campaign, so when you get to the end of her campaign, yeah, it's just the same fight again using a different character. This does happen multiple times, like when Jake and Sherry cross over with Leon and Helena, and the 4 of them fight Ustinek. You do that twice, and it happens many other times too. It would be a nice touch if the game remembered your playthrough, and when you got to those segments the second time, you could just skip them since you already did it in a previous campaign. Ada does get to fight and take out the fake Ada though, so that's a unique side to her story, but still underwhelming. But yeah, the true overarching storyline is a corrupt government guy named Simmons obtains the viruses doing his own twisted experiments, becoming obsessed with Ada Wong and creating a fake Ada that betrays him anyway, and wanting to stop the president speaking out about Raccoon City, he starts his own zombie outbreak. Also had backup plans for world destruction, with more outbreaks on the way, with the giant house creature that Chris and Pierce take care of, and Sherry brings Jake to use his blood in order to create an antivirus created to help stop future spreads of the C virus. But I still don't know why Simmons turned into a dinosaur. I'll say this, the game feels big. It feels like they really swung for the fences here, and it's like they tried to give pieces of what everybody liked about the last 2 RE games, as well as add in some new stuff. I do admittedly love the gameplay, with massive improvements on the AI partner from Part 5. I liked a lot of the locations and the city streets and the crossover stuff. I loved all of the characters minus Helena and Pierce. I kind of wish it was Claire for the Leon campaign and Jill for the Chris campaign, respectively. That way it would really feel like a big Avengers level Resident Evil game, which is basically what it is. You could have had Jill getting Chris out of his funk, that would make more sense, and seeing Claire and Leon together during another zombie outbreak, they could have done a lot with that. But whatever, we got what we got. Obviously for me, the nearly 20 hours it takes to complete all 4 stories was a bit too much, especially with replay areas that could have been cut out, and just the relentless nature of the combat here that never stops. I do like the combat, but dear lord, it just goes on and on and on, and it gets kind of crazy. There are some moments that break it up, like the small puzzle segments or the vehicle segments that I enjoyed, but it's far from the humble beginnings of just exploring one location. The villain is also kinda lame. He's just a big Ada Wong simp like the rest of us, and overly not going to be that memorable in the pantheon of Resident Evil villains. But between the car chases, plane crashes, zombie fights, war zones, escaping facilities, submarines, skyscraper battles, even after all of that, I beat the game thinking, that was kinda rad. I promise, I'm not trying to be a contrarian just for the sake of it. I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, and I'm not lying to you guys. I actually really liked this game. Despite having some frustrations and understanding why people don't, I enjoyed it. It's not near my favorite Resident Evil game, but it's nowhere near the bottom as well, as I've seen on so many people's lists. I've seen more people rank this as the worst Resident Evil game than any other, and after playing it, well, I guess my tastes are just a little bit different. For me, it's somewhere in the middle. If I was doing a tier list, it would be like solid mid-B tier. It's over the top and convoluted as hell, but I can't lie, I had a lot of fun with it. And with that, I do believe I have come to the end of an era with Resident Evil, because RE7 is going to go straight back to the horror roots. It's going to be first person, and it's going to star a brand new character. So for the finale of this era of Resident Evil, and before I get to the next 2 games and then RE9 that comes out next year, I think this was a decent send-off. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about RE6 down below. I know many of you guys are going to hate my opinion on this and tell me why it's terrible, but hey, that's the point of doing reviews. Everybody has a different perspective. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys. If you want to, I do have a Resident Evil playlist right now where I reviewed as many of the games I can get my hands on, as well as the animated stuff and the live action films. All of that will be linked down below. If you guys want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships and all the social media links where you can follow me down there too. Channel's not doing so hot right now, so even $1 a month on Patreon would mean the world to me. I'd really appreciate it if you would consider it. But regardless, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.
So cute.